Hello there, Earful Tower listeners. Oliver G here with another episode from Paris. And this week, we're talking about the comedy of living in Paris with special guest Sarah Donnelly. Sarah Donnelly is an American from North Carolina, and she's been living in Paris for 10 years, and she has just sold out over a dozen shows, the only American in Paris. I saw it last night. It was hilarious, very relatable. If you've been living in Paris, if you know the truth about Paris, you'll be able to relate to it, as I did. Literal tears streaming from the eyes of my wife, Lena. Really fun night. So, she's on the show to talk about her own show, her life as a stand-up comedienne in Paris. Also, the conversation, we talk about some stories about the likes of Emmanuel Macron, Jerry Seinfeld, Michael Jordan, and Mayor Anne Hidalgo. They all crop up, as well as much more. If you want to check her out, Sarah Donnelly, the only American in Paris, you can find her at Sarah D Comedy. I'll repeat that at the end, and it will be in the show notes. But for now, you're listening to the Earful Tower podcast, brought to you by the Patreon supporters of this show, patreon.com/The Earful Tower, without whom I wouldn't be doing this show. So thanks to them. You can join them to get all kinds of perks and fun things to do in Paris. I'll talk about that at the end of the show too. But now it's time for Sarah Donnelly talking about life in Paris with music by Press Maxon. Here we go. Sarah Donnelly.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much for your show. Putting on your show. It was a barrel of laughs. We really enjoyed it. Let's start with talking about the show, because I saw it 10 hours ago and it's still on my mind. First thing I want to say is, firstly, it was really hilarious. Lena was in tears.
Oh, thank you.
She was in tears. Although the woman that was in front of Lena was... I thought she was going to have a heart attack.
Oh my God.
Could you hear her from the stage?
I couldn't hear individually, but was she the woman that had been here for 37 years?
No. She was like one back from her.
Okay.
And she was guffawing. Do you use that word in America?
Yeah, we do. Guffaw. Yeah. That's like a hearty, deep laugh.
Because when you, without giving any of the jokes or anything, when you mentioned Las Vegas, remember that bit?
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. Water.
Oh, yes, yes.
When you said that, I thought she was like suffocating or something. And I wondered if you could hear it, because it felt like you were taken aback by this woman.
To be honest with you, in that moment, in that bit, I was like, it's really interesting when you're performing what you have going on in your mind, because obviously I'm listening to the audience, because I'm seeing I'm kind of taking a record. I'm like, oh, this is working well, or this is working differently, or, oh, maybe I said this a little different this time. So I'm kind of analyzing as I go through. But I was really in that moment just performing the bit and just enjoying the fact that everyone was enjoying it, and I was just kind of getting into it.
Was it a good audience last night?
You guys were a great audience. Yeah.
Would you have told me if we were a bad audience?
I wouldn't have told you if you were a bad audience, but you probably would have known you were a bad audience.
I don't know, because I was thinking, I thought it was a good, because the show starts at 9:30, right? And before it started and everyone was sitting there was energy, and people, were you looking from backstage or something? Because I was like, oh, good energy, this is going to be good no matter what.
I wasn't looking from backstage, but I could hear the audience, and the audience, it felt like good energy. And then my friend John O'Duffy, fellow Australian, came to open. And he was doing a great job. I was like, oh, this audience is great. You're ready for comedy. You want to laugh. Sometimes audiences can be, it's not a bad audience. A bad audience would be an audience, first of all, that doesn't know English, that comes to your show, and they want to experience comedy, and they're like, oh, let me see how this art form works.
What, you mean French? Is that what you mean? French people?
Well, yeah, French people. But when I first started performing in Paris, now it's been 10 years. In the beginning, there wasn't stand-up on Netflix. Netflix wasn't in France, first of all, and there wasn't stand-up on Netflix. And so stand-up remained very uniquely Anglophone in a lot of ways. And so people coming to our first shows, me and my other Anglophone comedians, they'd never seen stand-up comedy before, and they didn't really know what it was. And so they were curious. They were very polite, but they weren't laughing. So you feel like you were bombed. I was like, oh my gosh, we totally bombed. We did horrible. And then they would leave and be like, oh, that was really nice. We really liked it.
That's really interesting. So it's like a different, because so when did stand-up comedy come to Paris then?
I think stand-up has been here for a while, like in the French version. But now because of Netflix, people can easily see stand-up comedy, and that has made the art form much more accessible. So people know what it is, as opposed to in those beginning days, I think people were treating it with like curiosity and respect. And so they're just kind of observing. And stand-up comedy, it's a conversation with the audience. So I'm talking to you and you guys are talking back by laughing, and we're in it together. And so if you're like separating yourself and just kind of pulling back and watching, then it's not like theater. Like theater, you don't want to engage with the actors. So
could you tell it was me that said Poland? Could you tell it was my voice?
No, I couldn't tell it was you.
Oh, okay, I wondered that because you asked where people were from, and we were I was with Lena, and then a Polish woman and a French guy, and she didn't want to be involved. So I thought, when you asked where we were from, I yelled out Poland, and I was like, I wonder if Sarah. I wondered if you could see me or hear my voice.
I honestly, the lighting, even though he had the lights up, it's when you're on stage and the full lights are on, you can't see anything. Yeah. And then he pulled the lights up a little bit so I can kind of see, but I couldn't tell it was you. No.
The other, no, not at all. I didn't want you to, because I didn't want to put you off. I didn't want you to be, even to recognize someone that you knew. I didn't want to put you off, whether it would or wouldn't. So I was sort of hiding back in the back and passing the blame.
I know, which I called you out. I was like, hold on a second. Poland is not a man. It's a woman. I was like, your friend just sold you out.
Dude, I was going to say Sweden as well. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to say about it was, I was struck by how, just in general, but you as well, but how brave you must have to be to do that. Like, it's because I love stand-up comedy and comedy in general. I think I've thought about it a lot. I've listened to a lot of interviews, watched a lot of stand-up shows. And I know that it's such a, like, it's so different. Like Larry David said once that he found it really easy because he knew if he was good at it or not because people laughed. It was that simple. Whereas doing drama, he's like, I would never do it because I don't know. And it feels to me that you'd have to be so brave to dare to do it. Do you feel, does it come naturally, or did you have to like overcome some demons to get up there? Or?
Oh my gosh. Everything you're saying is so correct. First of all, one of the great things about stand-up is you know instantly if it's working or not. Immediately. So that's really great because you have immediate feedback. So if you have a new joke and you're like, okay, this worked, you can kind of gauge how things are going. It was very scary the first time I got on stage, of course, because trying to make people laugh is incredibly difficult. Everyone's like, that seems like it's hard. I'm like, it is.
Plus, it's not like at a group, like at a dinner where you say something funny, but you're not expected to, so you get a laugh and it's fine. But you're like standing up there going, I'm going to try to make you laugh, and hopefully you'll cooperate a little bit.
And
otherwise,
people
it's
expect it.
Yeah, they're like, entertain me. That's pretty scary.
Yeah, it's not, because there are people who, to be funny in a group is one skill, but like to do it like, no, I'm deploying this right now and you're going to laugh. Yeah, it's a learning process. Like the only way to get better at doing stand-up comedy is to do stand-up comedy. And so I've had loads of horrible gigs and bombs and done bad shows. I mean, that's part of it. That's like doing anything really. Like you have to keep trying and trying until you get better. And that's how you improve as well, by you continuing to do it and push yourself. But part of the trying means you're probably not going to make people laugh, and having the self-awareness, because some people really are delusional and they'll bomb and come off stage and be like, I think that went pretty good. And you're just like, oh, wow. Oh, no.
And the other comedians like, yeah. Or you're like, not really.
Well, you're just like, you're kind of like, what? What happened? But you have to really want to do it. You have to you're putting yourself out there. It's very vulnerable. But it's a lot of fun, and it's really powerful to make an entire room of people laugh and come along with you. And like, I love entertaining. I love being on stage and doing my show. I have so much fun. And I mentioned, like last night, I was like, come, like we're going to have a party. We're going to have a great time. I'm going to make you laugh. And we're all going to leave the theater like having had a good experience together. Like that's what I want people to leave.
There's power in making people laugh as well. I think was Marilyn Monroe said, if you can make me laugh, you can make me do anything. What does that mean?
There's a French expression about this too, about like, if you get a woman to laugh, she'll sleep with you. I think this is where this is going. I don't remember the expression, but I have to say, as a woman in comedy, it doesn't exactly work like that.
No, interesting. Are there many other, are like French female stand-up comedians? Are there many of them, or is it more of a...
I mean, it's definitely, in general, stand-up comedy across the board is definitely male-dominated, but there are definitely more male comedians in Paris performing in French or English than female, but, you know, we're out there. I mean, one of the most famous, she's more of one-woman show style, but Florence Forestier is like probably the most famous female French comic who's performing right now. But she's more, like I said, theatrical. I mean, she's telling jokes, but, you know, she's not holding a microphone, but she's very, very famous and successful, so...
Your show is, we could say it's about the comedy of living in France. We could say that, which is a good headline for this podcast, which we agreed on. But what I liked about it, and I hadn't even thought about this, is that it spoke so in such a, like, for me, I've lived here for eight years or so. And so some of the things that you was like, if I rewind, like when I watch TV or Netflix or a stand-up comedy, an American stand-up comedy show, there's things that are relevant to me, but not anywhere near on the same level as talk about an incomplete dossier or going to the pharmacy in Paris and stuff like that. So it was like it resonated in a whole different way. It was so nice to have that feeling. Is that the kind of feedback you've been getting from other people, like other expats and foreigners living in Paris, or is that, you know, it speaks to people on a different level?
Yeah, I think like that is a lot of my community are foreign people in Paris, and French people too. French people can have these experiences. I talk like going to the pharmacy. That's a normal everyday thing.
Daily would be concerned.
Yeah. I was like daily, maybe not daily. I meant like daily in the quotidien, like the normal life way. But yeah, I mean, I think those are the people like you guys are going to understand it the most. Like I've had tourists come, and there were some tourists last night, and you can still have a laugh and have fun and enjoy it. But you're like, if you've never had to put together a dossier, you don't know the pain. And that's what I'm trying to get into. So
do you think that there is, do you think there's a lot of comedy in daily life here in Paris?
Well, obviously.
Surely it's easy to find comedy everywhere if you want, especially if you're a comedian.
Of course, yeah.
But do you think like just general day to day, do you think it's funny, or do you sort of like, because a lot of it's like in your show, a lot of it is like, oh man, this, like, oh, the dreaded this or the dreaded that. Is that an approach to find it funny, or do you actually find it funny?
It's really funny. When I find myself getting really mad about something, I'm like, oh, this will be a good joke. If I have a strong reaction to something, I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. And a lot of the things I talk about in my show are true. I have a story about where I talk about my bank called me because they thought I had suspicious activity on my account. That was a true story. And then as it was happening to me, I was like, oh, this is going to be a great joke. I think as a comedian, you are looking for these things. So anything that gets a strong reaction out of me. But of course, being foreign in Paris, even though I've lived here for over 10 years, I'm making mistakes all the time and doing the wrong thing. And making those mistakes is what makes it funny. And I do laugh at myself. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe. What have I done now?
That's funny because I have a sort of similar thing to that, not in a comedy perspective, but if something happens to me that's story worthy, like I'm like, that could make a good podcast episode or for a book or something like that. Except I think, you know, like the really irritating admin ones, like deep stories, you know, there's no time, like no one cares for the deep details, you know, like you can't go on about it because everyone's like, yeah, I know, it's terrible. You know what I mean? Yeah,
that's where, like, I do have a couple jokes about dossiers and stuff, but I'm not getting into the nitty gritty. Like, there was what happened to me once is I went to go get my carte de séjour, my visa renewed, and they wanted my tax filing, my impôt. But it was the first year I was filing with my husband. We had just gotten married, and so we had to file on paper. I don't know. These are things that he told me, and I didn't have it. And the lady was like, well, you have to have it. And I was like, but I had to file on paper, so I don't have it. And she was like, but I have to. And we just went around and around in circles, and I'm like, this is crazy. But like that I'm not putting into the show because I don't know if that specific detail is funny, but also in specificity, you find universa. I can't say the word.
Well, it sounds like you're doing like a Latin quote or something.
I don't know what
in
I'm saying.
Specificity, there's universality.
Yeah, I can't say the word. In the specifics,
Your slogan.
there's the universal feeling. So even if I'm talking about a story that's very specific to me, I think what's important in comedy is the feeling. And so the feeling of frustration of not understanding a language or not understanding what's going on or doing the wrong thing or embarrassing yourself. That's the stuff that everyone can relate to, regardless if you've had to submit a dossier or you've ever been to the pharmacy and had to have an embarrassing conversation with the pharmacist. So for me, it's about the emotions, and that's where we all can laugh and relate, because even if you've lived that experience, it's even more funny. But if you haven't, you're like, oh my gosh, I can imagine what that's like. Or
do you think like a lot of the people that are listening to this right now around the world maybe never intend to live in Paris? Do you think these people realize how much of a headache actually living in Paris is? Do you think? Or do you think they're like sort of the Emily in Paris version of this place is perfect because they come here for 4 days and they stay in a nice hotel and they go to all the nice places? Do you think people are really aware?
I don't think people are really aware. It's one of those things. It's like having a baby. Like people can try to warn you what it's like, but you're just like, yeah, okay. I'm gonna do it different.
She did it.
Yeah, she did it. I can do it. Or you think like, well, I'm gonna do it better, obviously. Yeah. No. No, but I think Paris is such a beautiful city. It's such a cool place. It really is magical. And that magic, like, that's why I said in the show, I'm like, if you're a tourist, great. Come and enjoy the magic and fantasize and pretend to be Emily. Like, go for it. Yeah.
Get a beret?
Get a beret.
You think? You're encouraging it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I own a beret. And actually, as a gift for my French nationality, my husband got me a beret from the only bespoke beret couturier left in France. They're called Lolaire, and they have a shop on Rue Saint-Honoré.
That's a bit different, though, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people that wear a beret get like 8 for €4 or something.
Made in China. Mine was made in France, and it's from Basque Country. But I'm like, yeah, get a beret. Who cares? Have a good time. But that's why, for me, I think it's still interesting, though, to talk about what real Paris is, as much as we're sold this idea of dream Paris. That's not really real life. And I find real life here very interesting as well. And so that's why I like to talk about on stage, because I'm like, there's more to Paris than just, baguettes and macarons and Emily in Paris and berets, which is all great. There's also this like really cool, rich city, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. So let's talk about that.
Well, I also suspect that people don't actually want to hear... Like deep down, they don't want to hear. It's just like you said with pregnancy or childbirth or whatever.
Yeah.
People just don't want to.
They don't want to hear. They don't want to hear your horrible, horrific labor story. They don't want to hear about trying to put a dossier together to get an apartment. No. It
can be glossed over, maybe. I want to. You said a word that reminded me of something. You said macaron.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of your fantasy lover. I'm not sure.
My fantasy lover. I am a fan of the French president because he is such a cutie. I think he's very cute, and I do talk about this in my show in detail.
Yeah, but, very great detail. Do you really love him?
Do I really love him?
What would you say if he was hiding in the kitchen here?
If he was hiding in the kitchen, I might pass out. I don't know what I would do. Because unlike a lot of people in France, I think Macron is he's very charming. Like, one, I do think he's like sexy and attractive, but I also think he's very charming. Like, I don't
think there's anything wrong in saying that, because but you prefaced it. I don't want to get into the details of your show at all. Like, I don't want to spoil anything, but you prefaced it by being like, this isn't about politics. Let's talk about this guy.
It's not about politics, no.
And he's definitely a charming guy. I don't think anyone can deny that, right?
Well, he's very unpopular. I mean, French people love to complain about their president.
But the politics, so they're talking about him.
The politics.
Yeah. Have you heard him speak English, by the way?
I have, but I just heard him speak English recently, and I thought his accent was slipping. I don't know.
What do you mean, slipping?
Like, I heard him speak English when he first ran for his first campaign, because he had a documentary come out about him that aired the night that he won. It was on TF1. And it was really interesting. It was about like his road to the presidency, and he really like loves Obama and was kind of wanted to model himself after Obama. And so he was speaking English, and I was like, oh, his English is really good. And then I saw something come across his Instagram, and I was like, oh, Macron, you are slipping, babe. We got to work on your pronunciation, honey. It's not as bad as the Francois Hollande, do you do like you do.
Yeah, I've seen that.
It's amazing.
It couldn't be worse than that, really. And this is true, I almost, I don't know if I'd say killed, but I almost knocked Macron over on a Velib bicycle.
On a Velib? Death by Velib. Where was his Secret Service agent?
This is before he was the president. So this is when he used to be the economy minister. And it was right when I moved to Paris in 2015. And he was laying a wreath at remember after the Bataclan probably, or the Charlie Hebdo, when they put all the flowers at the Republic, right? And I don't think you're meant to, but I used to cycle right through the Republic as a shortcut home. You're not meant to.
You're not supposed to do that.
Even in 2015?
I think even in 2015. Listen, but people ride their bikes everywhere, so well, whatever.
Well, at least I wasn't driving a car, right? Anyway, I crossed over, and there was a bit of there was commotion over there, and I was avoiding it. And the commotion was because there were cameramen and camerawomen following someone. And that person broke away from the cameras right into my, in front of my front wheel. And I screeched to a halt and looked up into his eyes. And he looked into my eyes.
You had a moment with Macron.
Yeah, that was a moment for sure.
You could have changed history.
If I had kept cycling. If I had hit him.
If you had hit him.
Yeah.
This is like the beginning of a movie.
It's good. It's good. Okay. We'll stop talking about it. I'll save this story.
Wait. And then you change places, and you become Emmanuel Macron, and he becomes you.
Yes.
And then you have to be the French president.
Now that could be a story.
I want 10%.
Okay, we'll sort that out.
Thank you.
Let's talk about other popular faces. Two stories I want to ask you about.
Sure.
Briefly, because it's not Paris related. I know you're from North Carolina,
Yes.
and that means you have to have had coffee with Michael Jordan or something?
Obviously, I know Michael Jordan. No, but I actually have I've seen Michael Jordan in Paris.
It's getting worse.
I know. It's like diluting down. No, I saw Michael Jordan in Paris.
Yeah.
In my neighborhood, they were dedicating a new basketball court called the Michael Jordan basketball court.
Yeah.
This was I don't know, 2015. I think it was 2015.
Yeah, okay, same year.
An iconic year.
Were you on a Velib?
I was not on a Velib. And my friend's husband worked for Anne Hidalgo at the time, and she was like, Michael Jordan's going to be around the corner from your house. You need to come down. And I was like, absolutely. And so Michael Jordan was there. I've never seen him all the years. I grew up in America, lived there for many, many years, lived in North Carolina, never saw him. But here I am in Paris, and there's fellow North Carolinian Michael Jordan. And he literally said 2 words. Obviously, he was contracted by Nike to be there, or the city of Paris paid him God knows how much money. And he just was like, hello, thank you. I mean, that was it.
Wow.
And I met but I did.
That would be enough for me.
So it was really cool. And I met Anne Hidalgo. I actually talked to her, and she spoke to me in English.
Really?
Yeah, because I was like, I'm actually from North Carolina. This is really cool. And she's like, oh, we love Americans.
That's funny that you say that. Because I've kind of retired from doing walking tours. I prefaced this story with, but I was doing a walking tour not that long ago. And we went past the town hall, and I said, this is the town hall. It's my favorite building in Paris, the big town hall. And I said, this is where the mayor, Anne Hidalgo, is running around. Might be able to see her through one of the windows. And then she walked less than a meter in front of us. And I go, oh, and there she is. And she turns around. I was like, hey, hi, Anne. And I was with some Americans.
Yeah.
And she goes, where are you from? In English.
Yeah.
And even though I'm Australian, I was like, we're from America. I don't know. I don't know.
You just want to play along.
And she said something similar. She's like, oh, I love America. Welcome to Paris. And we continued. I think the people that were on the tour were like, this probably happens all the time. But really, that was one in a...
That's an Oliver G exclusive.
I know.
How is it you just keep running into French politicians? You have a real knack.
Yeah, good question. The other person that we haven't talked about that I want to talk about, Jerry Seinfeld.
Jerry Seinfeld.
There's a picture on your Instagram of you and him just jamming out.
We were jamming out. Jerry Seinfeld came to Paris, and I got to open for him, which was very cool.
Do you think we need to explain who Jerry is for people who don't know? Or does everybody know?
I think everyone knows who Jerry Seinfeld is, except for French people.
Because the comedian.
Because so it was a show with Jerry Seinfeld and Gad Elmaleh, and I have a picture with me, Jerry, and Gad. And when I showed the photo to French people, they'd be like, "Oh wow, c'est Gad Elmaleh, mais c'est cool ça." And they're like, "Mais c'est qui?"
You can't be serious, really? People don't recognize.
They
Jerry
didn't know who
Seinfeld?
Jerry Seinfeld was. They knew Gad, and vice versa. When I showed like my parents, they're like, "Oh my God, Jerry Seinfeld." They're like, "Who's the other guy?"
Yeah.
Gad Elmaleh is like the Jerry Seinfeld of France. He's extremely famous.
Literally, almost. Some would say. Is
I
there beef between those guys?
Absolutely not.
Are you friends with them both?
I'm not friends with them.
Could have said it, but I mean, okay. I mean, you don't want to tread on any toes in your career either. But I know the story is that Gad got people like, "You're copying Jerry word for word," but then they're mates as well. So I don't think
Jerry Seinfeld cares. Honestly, I don't think Jerry Seinfeld knows. I don't think Jerry Seinfeld cares, and I don't know if Gad copied him or not. But I did tour with Gad as his opener, which is how I got asked to do the show. And he was always very, very nice and very funny. Yeah. And the fact, like, I don't know how long he's been learning English, but he decided, I want to do stand-up comedy in English. Yeah. And he made it happen. And I toured with him on his English tour.
What, in France or in?
No, he had a world tour. Oh, wow. And he went all over the world to do he specifically did not do it in France because I think he was afraid that even if he was like, it's in English, that French people would still come. And we did a show in Amsterdam, and there was a woman who found us after the show, and she was like, I came all the way from Bordeaux. And he was like, oh, great, did you like the show? She's like, I don't speak English. So,
yeah, right, I get it.
So he did a good job with that. But I remember I watched him backstage, and I'm like, he's so charismatic. He's very funny. He's a great performer. And I was so impressed because I had just started doing stand-up in French at the time. And I was like, wow, he is really crushing it. So
wow. But back to Jerry.
Back to Jerry.
Did you get a chance? I understand he's he's a big deal. He's probably not hanging around much backstage.
He really was not hanging around much backstage, but he was very polite. I just introduced myself, and he had a lot of questions. We didn't talk very long, but he had a lot of questions like, he's like, you do comedy in English in Paris? And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh. And he was like, is that all you do? And I was like, well, I do a lot of things because comedy in English is not a full-time job. I'm a writer. I do a bunch of other stuff. He was like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh, do you come to Paris often? He's like, not really.
Did he have, because that's one of the most famous people in the universe, I'd say. Right?
Yeah.
Especially in entertainment and stuff. Yeah. Did he have an aura? I've never met anyone that famous at all.
He did not have an aura.
That's interesting.
He also was about to go on stage. So I was talking to him very much in like a comedian to comedian way. Like I just introduced myself. I said, I just got on stage. I did 20. They're a really good crowd, just kind of, and then just having some small talk. He was polite, but kind of like he wasn't responding in a way to make it seem like he wanted to keep conversation going because he's about to perform. And when you're about to go on stage, you gotta. So I was just happy, like I got a photo and I introduced myself, and that's about all I could do.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So now we've covered Macron, Hidalgo, Jerry, and Michael
Jordan. You need to write this in the show notes so people are like, wow.
Yeah, so people can skip ahead.
What a star-studded event.
It is. This is a star-studded podcast episode.
I'm trying to think. Also, but I did meet his wife, or Jerry Seinfeld's wife was there, and she was really nice. And she's like, I really enjoyed your performance. I was like, oh, thank you so much. They were very polite, very nice. And I feel like Jerry Seinfeld probably gets hounded. People talk to him all the time. So I feel like the fact that he was polite was...
That's an aura. The stand-up comedy world in Paris, I think you and I probably have a lot of mutual acquaintances.
Yeah, I think so.
A lot of people out there doing stand-up. It seems to be growing.
Yes.
That's a good thing, surely.
It is a good thing. When I first came in 2012, there was one show, the New York Comedy Night, run by Sebastian Marks, and that was it. And now we have shows almost every single night. And there's open mics and all different levels. So that's really cool.
Where can people go to catch, let's assume they've already got their tickets to your show, which all the details are in the show notes. But let's say they've already got that. Where's a good place to go catch some English comedy in Paris?
Well, the New York Comedy Night still exists. And Sebastian Marks, it has an Instagram, and Sebastian Marks runs that every Saturday. And there's also a website called English Comedy in Paris. And that lists all of the shows, including all the open mics. So if you are visiting and you're a comedian and you want to do a show, like definitely do that. Or if you're just looking for something different to do, like a more local experience, because most of the comics, we all live here and we're not all American. Most of us aren't American. There's actually quite a few French people who perform in English and people from all over. So you get some really interesting points of view and stories. It's very cool.
Okay. And what about like for you with stand-up? Is there like a goal to just keep getting bigger and like bigger shows and like touring France, or like is the dream? You know, there's people in Paris who do the same show every night for 10 years. Like,
yes.
Do you have a goal on one of those fronts?
Absolutely. I'm really loving doing this show. It's been going really well. Last night I think was show number 17, and I've sold out 16 of those shows, which for me is huge. I wrote a television pilot, and I'm going to try to sell a television show, and that's like my next dream. And I would love to have a Netflix special. I'd love to have my 1 hour of stand-up on Netflix or Amazon or anywhere. So that's kind of what I would like to do, to get out there more in the universe and talk about France and my experiences living in Paris, but for everyone to see.
Can we finish on this question? And best of luck with all that. How can what's like people listening around the world, how can they best support that? If they're like, I like this lady, how can they make this happen? Is it like following you online, or is it coming to your shows, or is it?
That's such a great question. Yeah, following me online is the easiest thing, especially if you can't come to Paris. And supporting I do put out content. I put out clips of my stand-up. I'm hoping to record this show and put it online. So yeah, just watching the show, watching the clips, sharing it. And then if you are in town, come see a show. I'm in my DMs all the time. Send me a message. People ask me, when can I see you next? I post my schedule online. So if you can't see my 1 hour, but you're in town, I'd love to meet you. I'd love for you to come to a show, anything. So that would be great.
These listeners are going to be DMing you. Don't worry about that.
Oh, gosh. Okay. I do respond to people. I like the Instagram community. And
I think people underestimate how important following someone is, because it sucks. But like if you have 100,000 followers, you're much more likely to be taken seriously, even from someone giving a cursory look. I assume it's the same in stand-up comedian world. They're just like, oh, she's popular, we'll give her the gig or whatever. So, you know, like a follow is so easy and free to do. Click it. That goes for everything in the whole world. Follow it. But I want to finish on this. You mentioned it a bit in your show, Emily in Paris. Everyone's talking about that. That's on Netflix. It's probably influencing a lot of people's opinions of the city. Do you have an official take on that show?
Emily in Paris. I only watched the first season.
I've only watched the third season.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So what's that like? Do you feel like you understand what's happening in the third season?
Come on. I knew it wouldn't. I knew it wouldn't make any difference to start 3 seasons. My take on it was like, I get the gist. It's someone comes to Paris and it's very beautiful and a bit silly. Yeah. As in silly, as in, you know exactly what I mean. And I was like, I'll just jump in here and we'll see what I think of it. And I was like, I watched every episode. I was like, that was really fun and lovely and ridiculous. But I guess it's meant to be.
I think it's meant to be. I think I only watched the first season, but now I hear they're just doubling down on being like camp and extravagant, and like good for them. I think Emily in Paris, I think it's really interesting what it's done to the city for the people that live here. And I talk about it in my show. Like, I think people were really mad at first, even French people, like, oh, it's so unrealistic and blah, blah, blah. Like, I think we're just jealous. Things are too easy for her. Everything seems to work out. She's got this designer wardrobe. We're like, come on, girl, take the metro time.
It's funny because that's what we talked about at the start of this show. Like, if she did just do the stuff that we all have to do, maybe no one would watch.
Or maybe I feel like it's a missed opportunity for comedy. Yeah. I think there could be some great comedic moments about some of this, showing the daily life in a bit more real way. Not because, like, we need to teach people about French administration, but, like, I mean, how great would it be to have a scene of her going to the prefecture and bumbling that up as she tends to do and then trying to solve it? I mean, there's conflict. In conflict, there's comedy. So it'd be fun to see that. But
maybe it'll just have to be something for your Netflix special.
I mean, maybe so.
My fingers are crossed for you, Sarah. Good luck. And everybody go and check out Sarah online and at her show in person. Thanks for being on the Eiffel Tower.
Thank you. I love being here.
there you have it. Sarah Donnelly, that's Donnelly. Her show is The Only American in Paris, and you can find her online on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Sarah D Comedy, Sarah with an H at the end. Check out her show, it's at the Théâtre Bo, B-O, and you're gonna have a good night out. In other news, Patreon supporters I mentioned, I met with 15 of them last week to do a walk through Paris. I led a walk that was largely unscripted and unplanned, chasing the Lost Bièvre River with a special surprise at the end. We all went underground and looked at something that I've been wanting to look at for years and years and years, and it was really fun, and you're going to hear more about it on an episode soon. For all you guys who came along with me, thanks so much. Lots of pictures that I'll be sharing soon. For all you people at home, members who watched the live stream of it, the live stream of a lost river, very fitting. Thanks to all you guys as well. If you missed it, or if you're not yet a member, you can sign up patreon.com/The Earful Tower. Wouldn't it be nice to have invites to live streams and walks through Paris? Surely that would be something you'd like. Sign up today and say hello to me there on Patreon. If you're enjoying the show, I haven't said this for months, I think, leave a review. I got a notification that 800 reviews of this podcast exist now. I think, just for the sake of it, we should have a goal of 1,000. If we get to 1,000 reviews, I'll never mention it again. So if you're enjoying the show and you want to take 35 seconds, even if you just write, great, that counts as a review. So check it out, do that for me, and I'll be eternally grateful. Otherwise, a big thanks to everyone who's listening, a thanks to the members, a thanks to Sarah Donnelly, and a final thanks to Prez Maxon, the musician, whose tunes are going to lead us out for another week. Merci beaucoup, everyone, and au revoir.